Good evening. Welcome to the September 9th, 2024 Cabarrus County Board of Education work session. The board has just reconvened in open session from closed session. Board members, we will move to 4.01 for the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. Thank you. Board members, we'll move to 5.01 to adopt the agenda. We'll be adding 5.02, approval of personnel appointments to the agenda. I call for a motion to adopt the agenda with the change.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Lindsay, a second by Mr. Floyd. Is there any discussion about the agenda, board members?
You have an item 9 point something, signing of a ethics statement. Every board member here has signed that statement. What's the purpose of the item?
That actually was signed before I got brought in.
Mr. Eisenhower, our attorney, wants us to go over this.
Yeah.
And we'll have a discussion after we talk about it. Okay. So all those in favor of adopting the agenda as presented, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The agenda has been adopted with the change. We'll move to 6.01 board chair comments. I would like to ask our Vice Chair, Sam Treadaway, to give us an update on the implementation of a new school visit calendar for board participation. Mr. Treadaway.
As our board is aware, we have a new board clerk, Lori Furr, who there's no introductions required. We've known her for quite a while. She's going to be setting up school visits so that we can get in and see what's going on firsthand. We're looking forward to that, and we will try to get in on each visit a couple of schools that are in close proximity so that we can get a couple in. But we're looking forward to that, to see all the magic things that happen in our classrooms. Ball games are great. A lot of extracurricular things, they're great to see, but there's nothing like watching the instruction in the classroom firsthand. So we're looking forward to doing that, and we hope to be in your school soon.
Thank you, Mr. Treadaway. We'll move to 6.02, Superintendent Comments with Dr. John Kopicki.
Thank you, Mrs. Adcock. A few things to point out. As of today, our current enrollment is at 35,216. So we are slowly rolling towards our 40-day projection. Right now, we do anticipate adding along the lines of probably another 300 to 400 students. And we'll keep the board updated on that, but our growth does continue. And last week, the state released our test data and our school report cards that Mr. Sane will go over in more detail on our business meeting next week. He'll go over a presentation with the board on that. But these reports provide insight into how schools across North Carolina performed over the last year. While these numbers and letters offer a snapshot of academic progress, they don't fully capture the incredible work happening every day in Cabarrus County schools. Our district is focused on fostering a well-rounded, supportive environment where students not only achieve academically, but also grow as individuals. Today, I'd like to share some key highlights from last year's data that reflect our continued commitment to educational excellence and success of every student. Our academic growth. For the third consecutive year, Cabarrus County Schools has seen an increase in its overall proficiency rate, rising to 61.6%. This places the Cabarrus County Schools 15th among North Carolina's 115 school districts and 3rd among the 12 largest school districts. Cabarrus County Schools also ranks 9th statewide in college and career readiness, demonstrating the district's continued focus on preparing students for life beyond high school. The percentage of our schools receiving an A or B rating increased from 15 to 17, meaning 41% of our schools achieved these top ratings, significantly higher than the state average of 27.8%. Additionally, 80.4% of the Cabarrus County schools met or exceeded growth. surpassing the state average of 72.5%. For the first time since 2017, every Cabarrus County Schools elementary school met or exceeded growth expectations. The district's graduation rate has improved for the third straight year, climbing from 88.9% to 90.6%, a significant accomplishment. And Cabarrus County Schools continues to prioritize career development, advanced course placement, and acceleration opportunities to meet the needs of our diverse learning student population. These results are a testament to the dedication of our Board of Education, our teachers, our staff, and our leadership. While celebrating the gains, the district remains focused on areas needing improvement to ensure all students reach their full potential, which goes along with our theme of constant, continuous improvement. This year, we will maintain a strong focus on alignment and engagement, aiming to refine instructional practices through professional learning communities and creating a model of excellence that sets national standards. Again, I want to thank everyone that had a part in this to continue to improve our school system and to continue to see our students achieve at a high level, ranking among the best school system in the state of North Carolina, which is truly a tribute to our teachers and our board and our administrators and our parents and all of our community here in Cabarrus County. So I thank everyone for having a hand in this. That collaborative effort continues to push us forward, and it's encouraging to see for the third year in a row that we have improved our academics here in the Cabarrus County school system. So congratulations to all, and Mr. Sane will be here next week to present that information to all of our board. Our STEM schools of distinction, another high mark for us here in the Cabarrus County school system. Last week, the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction recognized 5 of our schools as STEM model schools of distinction. These schools were Central Cabarrus High School, C.C. Griffin STEM Middle School, J.N. Fries Middle School, Patriots Elementary School, and Coltrane Webb Elementary School. 5 of 17 schools rewarded last week across the state were from Cabarrus County schools. Again, that's 5 of the 17 that were recognized were from Cabarrus County. Congratulations to our administrative teams, our teachers, our staff, and students at these 5 schools for making this achievement possible. Another example of the excellence that exists here in the Cabarrus County school system. And then finally, I want to congratulate the following staff members who have been rewarded recently for their hard work in the classroom. Jennifer Nichols, an English language arts teacher at Harold E. Winkler Middle School, has been selected as one of only 24 educators across the United States to join the 2024-2025 Teachers Collaborating Across Borders cohort. She'll also be presenting at the UNC Worldview Global Education Symposium, sharing amazing resources for K-12 educators. Again, another example, when I say to folks we compete nationally, we truly do with our students and our teachers. She's one of 24 across the United States. Continue to put us on the national map. Additionally, Corey Cobble, a STEM teacher at R. Brown McAllister STEM Elementary, has been awarded a prestigious Fulbright Teacher Exchange Award for the 24-25 academic year, and she'll join over 800 U.S. citizens teaching, studying, and conducting research abroad, expanding her network and continuing to global education. We congratulate these incredible educators for representing Cabarrus County schools on the national and global scale, and you can read more about their accomplishments on our district website at www.cabarrus.k12.nc.us. And I also want to welcome our interns this evening and welcome you to our meetings, and we look forward to hopefully you having a great year here, and under the leadership of Mrs. Escobar, you have a great year and enjoy your internship here with the Cabarrus County School. So thank you for representing us in such an excellent fashion and for being here this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Kopedicki. That's great news. We'll move to 6.03, our attorney comments with Mr. William Eisenhower.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to provide a quick update on a recent litigation matter. Over the last several months, the Board of Education has defended claims asserted by Save Our Schools et al. Regarding the closure of Beverly Hills Elementary School. On August 7th, 2024, the Honorable Michael D. Duncan, Superior Court Judge presiding, heard oral arguments on the Board of Education's motion for summary judgment against plaintiff Save Our Schools et al. On September 4th, 2024, the judge issued an order ruling that there is no genuine issue of material fact as to plaintiff's claims against the Board of Education. The Board of Education's motion for summary judgment was granted. Plaintiff's motion for summary judgment was denied. Plaintiff's motion to strike was denied. And at this time, there's no pending action concerning Beverly Hills Elementary School, and demolition is scheduled to proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Eisenhower.
Madam Chair, what about the birds? Are we still obligated?
I don't think the birds are still there. We haven't heard anything about them since that issue was raised a couple months ago.
But if they are, do we have an obligation to
We
wait?
never had an obligation, but as far as we know, that they were intended to fly back to their South American home.
Maybe we might want to figure that one out.
I believe that deadline was October 15th, Dr. Bowers. We were checking on that, but we'll definitely look into that before we tear the chimney down.
What is October 14th?
October 15th, I believe, was the final possible migration date, if I'm saying that correctly. But we will watch that and keep an eye on that as well. But when we went in there the last time, if you recall, there was nothing in there, and their nesting season, so to speak, has expired. So they'll be migrating back, I believe, to South America. Is that right, Dr. Bowers? And we had said that if there was anything in there, we would halt on tearing the chimney down until we made sure that they were all gone. Or
Yeah,
there was no one there.
let's make sure we do that.
We will.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eisenhower. That's great news. We'll move to 7.01, our school improvement plan updates with Dr. Jonathan Bowers and Ms. Sarah Reeves. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening to you, members of the board, and Dr. Kapicki.
Presentation. up there.
Matt, this is going to be the school improvement plan update presentation. So tonight we wanted to bring before you tonight an update on the school improvement planning process. As we embark upon the new school year, here we are, it's day 19. It's hard to believe that that many days has passed since the beginning of the school year itself. And really our schools are clicking on all cylinders. It's amazing if you've had an opportunity to visit, an opportunity to get out and see the wonderful things happening, as Mr. Treadway alluded to earlier. Really, many schools have found their rhythm. And a lot of that is due to the result of the work that they've put in, not only the summer, but even going back to the end of last school year. So tonight's presentation is intended to give you an update on the timelines and what has occurred since the end of last school year and up to this point, from school improvement planning, from continuous improvement planning, from goal identification, and to some of the actions that schools are going to be initiating this upcoming year, and also touch upon what will be some of the supports that we have in place as schools are really setting forth and doing yeoman's work on achieving the outcomes that they've established for their students and certainly for their school communities. So with that, all right, once again, this is starting to become a pattern with me. Well, operator error. You know, that's probably not a bad idea.
I don't know that I'm
Thank you,
gonna
Ms.
add
Sandage.
anyone to this.
And it will work. All right. Yes, in fact it was, so thank you. So nonetheless, just to give you an outline as to what we plan to share with you tonight and let you know where we intend to go with this presentation.
So one of the things that we really want to be intentional about is modeling continuous improvement. So we've spoken to all of our school leaders about this, but we believe that we need to embody this as a district as well. So every year we talk about school improvement planning, and our hope is that you're actually going to see things that we are doing differently as a district as well, as it relates to provisioning support to our schools based on a tiered differentiated support model. So again, constantly improving based on feedback, based on data, to make sure that we're doing the best possible thing for our students and provisioning the support that is needed based on the data and feedback from our school leaders.
So with that, we want to be intentional about our alignment, because it's one thing to have improvement, but if you're not aligned and you don't have all arrows pointing in the same direction, you could be missing the mark as to what those outcomes are going to be. So when we speak from an alignment standpoint, obviously it begins with the state of North Carolina. The North Carolina State Board of Education begins with their strategic priorities. And from that, you can see how that then feeds into what are going to be those identified priorities at the district level. So that would be our district strategic priorities. And then from that, you can see many of the actions and efforts that play out at the school level, and that's where you see the school's vision, the mission, and their identity, as well as their goals and their priorities for the upcoming school year. So if we want to take a quick look at what are those North Carolina School Board Association, or excuse me, the State of North Carolina strategic priorities, you can see here, it begins with looking at eliminating opportunity gaps among students. So when we talk about school improvement planning, obviously we're looking at subgroups of students. We're looking at the data to be able to say, hey, how can we inform instruction for students so that all students are achieving their maximum potential? We want to improve our school performance and our district performance. You heard Dr. Kapicki lead off tonight with some of the accomplishments we've had since the end of last school year and some of the gains that were made throughout the year. More information will be shared next week as well, but keeping that in mind and saying this really is about overall performance for not only schools but the district as a whole. And we also increase our educator preparedness, and that becomes through our professional development. And that becomes through our district support programs. When we now take this down to the school level and we look at this, we now have the strategic priorities that the district has set in forth, keeping in mind that our school improvement efforts will work within the framework of these strategic priorities. Every school improvement plan will be tied back to one of the strategic priorities at the district level. That way we can ensure that the work that's taking place aligns with what are those identified priorities that the district has set aside, and also we are contributing towards enhancing our district's profile moving forward. This here is just an image that symbolizes the work. This is our continuous school improvement framework. Many of people call it flower power, if you will, sometimes. That is sometimes used because of the images that it brings up. But it really speaks to that improvement as a continuous cycle. It's something that never ends. It is ongoing. And it's an inquisitive model that we have in place. We're always asking ourselves, where do we want to be? How will we know? What progress are we making? And ultimately, where are we to know that as we move forward that we're making the gains which we've stated we're going to achieve? And within that framework, you can see at the very heart of it is a culture of excellence. Dr. Kapicki mentions this time again, being the best in the nation, being the standard bearer. That's what this is predicated upon. So again, continue to drive and continue to make sure that we are getting better each and every day.
So in an effort to continue to improve as a school district, this year during our summer leadership conference, we actually set the stage for schools following up from the 23-24 school year to let them know about the expectations and how we would be laying out school improvement planning goals, both at a district level, but also what we were asking of schools in service of Destination 2025 and our strategic plan. So as you can see here, we asked every school to have at least 3 school improvement plan goals, the first speaking to student wellness, and then the second actually specifically identifying teaching and learning and taking it one step forward in terms of actually asking schools to name priority areas in foundational literacy, 8th grade math, and Math 1 this year. The intentionality in that is specifically looking at historical data and seeing what do we believe to be true based on our strategic plan and data, but also where do we know the needs exist the most. And so obviously we believe that in order to have great outcomes, you have to have that strong foundational literacy. Students have to know how to read, and they have to know to be able to understand and learn as they carry through their K-12 career. Then when you're specifically thinking about middle school, when we look at 8th grade math and Math 1, based on our acceleration pathways, we know that some of our students that may have historically had gaps in mathematics end up in 8th grade math and then Math 1 in high school. And so we want to specifically target interventions, support, professional development, and curricular resources to identify these areas. So as a district, we have a united theme around the areas of targeted focus. And then last but not least, we know that each of our schools is incredibly different. And so we want schools to have the freedom and autonomy to be able to use their data and know the student population that they serve to be able to develop individual school improvement planning goals that might be unique to their school.
So, as we mentioned at the outset, this didn't start taking place when school started this year. Right? Much of this work and many of these efforts began long before the 23-24 school year began. As a matter of fact, if you see here, we've gone back as far as June. So as summer leadership, at the end of the 23-24 school year, schools had an opportunity to come together with their leadership teams. And they had a chance to participate in dialogue, in team building activities, in school improvement planning activities on protected days, to which they would be allowed to really take an in-depth look at what was the preliminary data showing them at the closeout of the 23-24 school year. And with that in mind, and using the strategic priorities as a guide and as a framework for how they would go about their efforts, they then began working on those identified goals that Ms. Reeves just explained to you. One with which would come from student wellness, one with which would come from teaching and learning, with a specific focus on certain key academic areas within the school. And then lastly, a school choice goal, and this is where they would be able to use the data to say, what does it tell us, where do we need to give our attention, and what's going to be that key leverage point which we can give our focus on this year to be able to advance the greatest outcomes for students. So with that, comprehensive needs assessment took place in June. They started to then think through, what is the data telling them? And then from that emerged what would be those goals for the upcoming school year. Now again, these were in an unrefined state. These were one's drafts. So through that process, you have to continue to hone, to refine, and to tweak and adjust. And that's what occurred during the summer months. This year, what we were able to do as a district team, we were able to offer support and coach individual schools through their goal development process as well. So there was feedback that was provided. Schools took the feedback and then they further refined their goals as they entered into the month of August. August arrives, and then schools are able to then share the work that had taken place with their leadership teams with their entire staffs. So as teachers started to return to the building, conversations then became centered around school improvement. What does this year become? What does 24-25 look like? And then feedback from staff was able to further refine the school improvement plan. Last week, we had the last data point that was presented, and that was the results from the state of North Carolina, the accountability results. And so the last piece of this that'll play out before we actually bring the plans to you in October for approval will be schools will make those last minute adjustments and those last minute tweaks to what are going to be those percentages which they know are going to put them over the top and really move them forward. So that is that last piece that's playing out right now as we speak. So again, we share that to say it's not as if schools showed up for the first time on August the 13th and said, hey, let's start the work. It started well in advance of that. And these efforts are playing out, as I mentioned, to say if you visit these schools, you see a lot of these strategies, a lot of these activities, a lot of these actionables taking place at the school level, and the excitement is there, and there's the focus is there, and really there's a synergy that exists right now among all the collective parties involved. These are some of the things to which we mentioned that are specific tangibles that we can say have occurred. So currently right now, principals are coming in and meeting with district staff on their continuous school improvement plans at the beginning of the year to continue to review and to continue to get feedback and to have rich conversation. These have started happening since the beginning of school. This week marks the deadline to which we're saying, okay guys, we are now nearing the point we want to button up all of the statutory and procedural elements. Because we know school improvement planning, while it is an active process and an iterative process, there are statutory obligations that must be met as well. And schools are aware of that, and they're fulfilling those responsibilities and assuring that they have been met. And we'll be able to share that information with you prior to the October board meeting as well, to say all schools have verified that they are now in compliance with what general statute offers for school improvement planning. We will have these plans available for you to review at the end of September prior to the October work session. So it gives you about a week or two to be able to see the plans, really understand them, and come prepared with any questions that you may have. And then on October 7th, we'll be presenting before the board and asking for your approval on this year's plans.
So from a district level, what do we do to support with continuous school improvement? So really, we like to think of this as really three buckets, specifically as it relates to teaching and learning and our school improvement plan goals. So the first of which is provisioning high quality curricular resources for all of our teachers. That is a commitment that we make, and we want to be very intentional about provisioning that level of support, specifically knowing that we have a diverse workforce that we are serving our students and making sure that they feel supported. The second piece of that is school support. So this is specifically tailored to each of our schools based on not only historical data and where they fall in terms of a tiered support model at the district level, but also based on individual need. We know each of our schools is uniquely different, and just the same way we would expect teachers to differentiate support, we believe that we need to differentiate support for our schools. And then certainly last but not least is obviously professional development. So we firmly believe that in order to continue to get better, we need to provide high quality professional learning experiences for all of our educators, not only around the data, but specifically their action items as it relates to their school improvement plan goals. So within that, we'll start with professional development. So we really bucket this out in three pieces. So the first of which, we know that our great instructional leaders, our administrators at our schools, we want to make sure that we equip them with the right tools and resources, not only to be able to provide high quality feedback in the classroom to our teachers to make sure that they are supported, but also that they can help lead the work. So whether that's in staff meetings, professional learning communities, or also in the data digs that we do after our benchmarks, we want to make sure that we are supporting our school leaders. Additionally, we use a framework that we're really proud of, TLT, which you may have heard of before, which is our teaching and learning teams, where we actually have school leadership teams come together, so teacher leaders in the building that are going to carry out the work of professional learning. So they're walking the walk every day, they're receiving high quality feedback in professional learning, and then they're taking that back to their colleagues. So giving them best practices, letting them try it out in their classrooms, and then them having the ability to share that work with their teams to say, these are some strategies, this was what worked in my classroom, these are some things that we learned about, and let me show you how we can do these things together. And then last but not least, obviously thinking about that entire instructional leadership team. Additionally, as we move forward to the teacher support, we really launched this year with our Rise Back to School conference. So one of the things that we are really proud of is building that teacher efficacy and empowerment. We are incredibly blessed with remarkable educators that are doing amazing things in classrooms every day. The biggest piece of feedback that we have heard time and time again is that I want to get out of the four walls of my classroom and hear about the amazing practices that are happening around the county, not just in my grade level or in my school, but what are third grade teachers across the county doing to help move the needle in terms of student achievement. And so the RISE conference really kicked that off, but we're continuing with that continuity and thinking through frameworks of being able to allow our teachers to showcase the amazing things that are happening in their classrooms on the work days throughout the year. And then, of course, we have specific targeted professional development not only for our instructional assistants, but also for our beginning teachers, and we work in service of human resources to be able to provide new teacher support. And then last but certainly not least, we also have what we call job-alike professional development. So for our instructional technology facilities, or for our assistant principals, for our principals, where we're coming together and saying, based on your like role, here are some high-quality professional learning experiences that we can provide you aligned to our district goals and instructional practices. Additionally, in terms of tailored curricular support, so over the last couple of years, this has been a labor of love for our district, and it started specifically with foundational literacy, where we launched the curriculum provision for Letterland a few years ago. As you may have remembered, there was a great need for a systematic phonics program in this county, and so we were able to launch the Letterland curriculum for our kindergarten through third grade students actually in 2020, which was a very interesting year, but it is still evidenced in classrooms today and definitely providing that strong foundational support. As we continue to work through that, we've also provisioned other curricular resources, specifically our math workshop materials this year, as well as literacy intervention programming to be able to provide a higher level of support for struggling readers, and we use that through the 95 RAP, which is a research-based group to provide high-quality curriculum for some of our most at-risk students. As we transition into middle and high school this year, we've made sure that we were very strategic. If 8th grade math and Math 1 were our goal, that we provisioned the highest quality resources to make sure that our teachers felt supported with the district goal of 8th grade math and Math 1. So we actually have been leveraging a open source resource, Open Up, to be able to support with this, and we are continuing to provide high quality ongoing professional development for our teachers in these areas. And so that is an ongoing effort this year to make sure that we are supporting not only the schools with their school improvement planning goals, but also the teachers that are executing these lessons on a day-to-day basis. And then last but not least, I spoke to this a little bit, but really providing strategic, intentional support. So not a one-size-fits-all for every school or every level in the county. And so we're working strategically with not only our leveled assistant superintendents, but also our principals and assistant principals to say, based on your individual school improvement planning goals, based on last year's data, where do we need to target support? So is there a specific grade level? Is there a specific content area that you believe you need additional supports with? And that's where we're actually deploying our instructional specialists and coordinators to be able to go out and provide strategic, ongoing support to these schools. So not just a one shot, we come out to the school and then we don't come back, but what does the ongoing support look like specifically for some of our schools that have different levels of need? And so that is an ongoing conversation and something that we are very proud of, because it is a work of cross-departmental partnership, but also a partnership with the schools where they are really driving what they need, and we are using our resources to work in service of their goals. And so part of that work of the cross-departmental collaboration is this idea of ongoing support. So one of the things that we are very blessed with in this county is not having to wait until end of grade or end of course assessment data to be released to know what we need to do. So as you have heard before, and in the spring I presented to you a contract specifically for Mastery Connect in our benchmark assessments. We firmly believe in making sure that our teachers and our school leaders have the data, not only from a grade level perspective and content area, but drill down all the way to individual students to know which students are on track to meeting their growth goals and which students need additional support. So we do quarterly data digs with each of our schools to be able to target and identify where are we at. Are we on track? Are we off track? What are we noticing? And then working with school leadership teams to be able to identify targeted support. So for example, if there is a certain standard that was assessed in the first quarter and we noticed across the district that we didn't see the mastery the way that we wanted to, our district specialists are actually provisioning a different lessons, resources, so that the teachers can go back and reteach in those specific areas. And we're not waiting till what I like to call the autopsy data, where it's at the end of the year and there's really not a whole lot we can do about it in terms of provisioning supports to the schools, students, and obviously the teachers. So that is an ongoing system of improvement that we will be continuing over the course of the year. And based on that data, we will be targeting individual school improvement to make sure that we are providing and provisioning the supports that are needed.
So this last piece here gives you, again, the timeline of what has taken place thus far and brings us up to what would be October. Again, it's important to note that when plans are approved or when that process occurs, the work doesn't stop. And the work hasn't stopped. It's been ongoing and it has been continuous. And again, modeling for schools what we would expect. Much of the work that Ms. Reeves just explained that district leadership has been has played a key role in developing and has helped us be able to provide these systems of support. That has been born out of the continuous improvement framework, our very own framework itself. We want to make sure that we honor that as well, and that which we ask of schools, we do ourselves. And so continuing to refine each year and to review how can we become better together, and what can we do to continue to leverage the expertise and the skill and the resources that exist in this district. And when you can create that alignment and you can create that common understanding as to where we're to go, you have a very powerful school system that is really stretching its boundaries of what it's going to accomplish. And there's untapped potential out there that we certainly are going to continue to explore and achieve. So we'll pause then and see if there are any questions.
Any questions, Ms. Escobar?
Thank you for all that information. Real quick, on one of the earlier slides, slide 8, what is ATSI?
Well, ATSI stands for Assisted Targeted Support Intervention School. That is a federal designation which a school sometimes receives as a result of subgroup performance within that school itself. So when there are notable achievement gaps that sometimes exist among subgroups, an ATSI designation may be established to a school. With that, that simply means that a school has to have a targeted school improvement goal identified specifically towards that subgroup to show that there are efforts playing out that are going to help improve outcomes for those groups of students.
Do you know how many we have of those in Cabarrus County?
I would have to defer to Dr. Roth for that question.
And I don't need it now. I just want to make sure I fully understand what that is. Okay. And the other question I had was, so I appreciate that this is an ongoing process. This doesn't just happen in October when we see it. So we got our grades from the state. Are we grading ourselves? And how do we support the schools that aren't those 17 schools that made the grade?
Absolutely. So when we specifically talk about the schools that we firmly believe have the opportunity to grow and do better, we are specifically looking at our continuous school improvement model and how we are leveraging support. So when I speak to the individual school support, that is going to be more uniquely identified for those schools. So things that you're going to see are additional supports provision, not only from resources, curriculum, professional development, and school support, but also frequency. So you're going to see consistent frequency of support in those schools and more directive support as it relates to targeting the areas of need. And we're actually identifying, I know Mr. Sain has spoken to you a little bit about letter grades and the difference between proficiency and growth. But a lot of that is there's certain areas which are not telling in a letter grade. So for example, you may see a school that from a face value in a letter grade is not acceptable, but it could be one grade level in one content area that got them to that grade. And so that is our job, to be able to disaggregate the data to determine the area of need and then provision support in that way. So to answer your question, it is going to go down to really a root cause analysis and then utilizing our targeted school support plan to address that specific root cause in the schools that have letter grades that we know need to be improved.
Ms. Lindsay?
Thank you for this presentation. I did have a question. So since one of our focuses, at least according to this, priority number 2, 8th grade math and math 1, I know that we have issue with math teachers right now and making sure that everyone has access to that. So with this being a priority of ours, how many of the middle school and high schools right now, specifically with 8th grade math and math 1, have virtual teachers? And what are we doing to try and help with that if they don't actually have a teacher in the classroom right now?
We can get a count on that. What I can tell you right now is that we are intentionally, every time there is a vacancy, myself, Dr. Williams, the leveled assistant superintendent, and the principal are getting on a call. And any time that we have any student on virtual, that is specifically a provision until we can hire a highly qualified teacher in front of those students. Right now, really it comes down to making sure that we're not missing any time with a vacancy being posted. So that ensures that at least we can provide high quality instruction for those students until the vacancy is filled.
And I know that he's working and it's fine. Just no worries. I just want to make sure that I wanted to know how many schools that we have in that situation right now and what we're doing for that. So thank you.
Ms. Sandage?
So 2 questions. There was a slide that referenced a NCDPI session. Can you tell me what that looks like? What's happening there?
Yes, ma'am. Great question. So NC STAR is the platform which schools use it for their school improvement process. That's where they enter their goals. That's where they will house their data. That's where they'll keep track of meeting minutes. So it becomes really, again, the instrument to allow them to, I guess, have a repository for years to come and to archive information. Every year what we'd like to do is we'd like to bring staff from the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction to visit Cabarrus County to train process managers. The process manager is the designated person at the school that is responsible for overseeing the implementation of NC STAR and the monitoring of it. So we spent some time doing some onboarding and some best practices and some how-tos with process managers that are new to their role. as well as those who wanted to come back and just brush up on some of their skills.
And how does that help with the process as a whole?
Great question. It allows for us to be able to have cleaner information to monitor throughout. It allows that the data that has been reported in NC Star is more accurate and more reliable.
Okay, that's good. And then in the beginning, you talked about one of the goals being related to student wellness. Has anything changed around what we do to monitor student wellness?
Good evening. We have several things in place to monitor student wellness. The first thing that we have is the Student Wellness Survey. And the Student Wellness Survey is given 3 times a year. The window opened today for students in grades 4 through 12. For students in K3, we have a teacher perception survey that we will give in December once the teachers get to know the students. And it's just a 4 questions questionnaire that they fill out, and it just helps to identify if there's any needs that we need to work on for the students. So that's how we're measuring the student wellness through our Panorama Student Wellness Survey. And then the second thing that we're doing for our SEL core curriculum, which is our positivity project, is the lessons are, depending on the schools, at least 2 to 3 or 4 times a week. And we measure that through positivity project fidelity checks. So our student services team goes out to the schools. We interview some students, teachers, administrators, and ask them questions about the project. What are they learning? What is their character trait of the week? We look for evidence in classrooms of that taking place, and we actually do some observation of lessons.
Does any of that include information from parents or from families?
I think the family comes through our survey. So we do have some questions that we've embedded into the parent survey, like, are you aware of the Positivity Project? And some student wellness questions just to get feedback.
And just to get perspective and to make sure public is aware, do we feel like the information that we get from the wellness study, I don't know, that might not be the right terminology, is holistic information that gives us insight into what students' needs are related to wellness, is what I'm trying to get at.
Yes, and we have identified several needs that we're working on this school year. As a district, we're working on sense of belonging. We want to make sure that students feel connected to school and are putting different action steps in place for that. Some schools have specific school improvement goals related to the survey, so it might be emotional regulation. Those are some things that, it just depends. There's 4 domains. And parents can access that on our website in the student family support page.
Perfect. Thank you for that explanation. Guys, thank you for the presentation. And I'm just going to guess that because of all of this work, this is the reason for the numbers we'd heard from Dr. Kopicki earlier today in his superintendent's report. So thank you for the great work.
Yeah.
Any other questions, Mr. Walter?
Yeah, thank you also for the presentation, and these plans are important, and it does help us to guide us along. Can you, I think you've explained it in the past, but why just 3 goals?
So it doesn't mean that they couldn't have more goals. And so several schools did actually select more than 3 goals. But we did ask them to keep it 3 to 5 goals. And that's intentional because most of these goals are really expansive. And so we want to be very intentional that we want them to do a few things really well and have a laser-like focus. Sometimes when you add too many goals to things, they're difficult to monitor, and then you dilute the impact of the intentionality around the goals. We've talked a lot with our school leaders about the intentionality that just because it's not named in a goal does not mean you continue to sustain and don't continue to improve. These are just specific areas that we've identified are our greatest areas of need, and so we're going to target additional support to be really intentional around improving in these areas.
But they're all smart goals, right? So they're
Yes,
all
sir.
measurable.
All measurable with a baseline and a target data measure, all within 1 year.
So do we have proficiency goals for each school? Is that part of that?
Yes, absolutely. So this year for foundational literacy specifically, it's going to be in grades 1st through 3rd grade, and those are going to be around proficiency goals in reading, either according to the end of grade test or DIBELS, which really measures the foundational literacy skills. Those are state tests. In 8th grade and Math 1, we actually provisioned the goals for each of the schools, not only based on the student population that they served, but also really looking intentionally at their student data and targeting the students that were on the cusp of proficiency to make sure that they had really ambitious and rigorous goals that would keep us at the top of the state, ideally being at the top in the nation, and specifically 8th grade math and Math 1.
Okay, and I think you may have mentioned the data portion, but we have several schools that have had significant population changes due to redistricting. So their population that you have the report data for is not the same population they have this year. I think you said you identified down to the student. Is that how it's continuing, or what do you do in this
situation?
So
we are incredibly grateful to have a very strong accountability team, and thanks to Mr. Sain's leadership, he was able to extract not only the historical data of the students that were being served in that school community, but it was actually the incoming students. So all of their goals are actually based on the students that are currently in their school, not the students that they had last year. So the reassignment would not have impacted their school goals because we were able to provision goals based on the student population that they're serving this year.
Okay.
And that was provisioned to them in June when we kicked off summer leadership. So the great thing is our school leaders knew the changes that were coming to them before they even started in August.
But not every district has this tool. It's something we have that we do.
It's all internally built, yes, sir. So we're very lucky.
Okay, and then this last part, these improvement plans are public information. Is that right? Is that accessible for the public to see, the parents to see?
Yes, sir. Once they actually have things put in NC Star, and once they've actually completed that process, NC Star is accessible on each school's website. They appear there, and then we'll be bringing that information to the board.
Is that just the current plan, or how about last year's plan, and how many?
Yes, sir.
Like a percentage of how many students, or how many of these plans, how many goals were actually met? Are we tracking that?
Yes, sir. They would have access to the comprehensive report within NC Star, and that would indicate whether or not a school completed that goal or whether they didn't complete that goal.
I'd be interested in seeing what our percentages are. So.
We'll have that shared with you when we present the plans this year.
Again, thank you for the presentation.
Any other questions, Mr. Treadaway?
So I'm reading, I didn't realize this is gross data. Gross data, that's redundant for some people, but I digress. Aggregate data for state, what I'm reading is that the early returns is that the letters training has been effective, and that one of the reasons they're saying that is because the early adopters are showing early results. And I know this is a Mr. Sain, I may be stealing some of his thunder, I don't know, but would you tend to agree with that from what you've seen so far?
Absolutely. So
Okay.
we were in cohort 1 of letters training with the state, and I very much attribute the foundational literacy strengths in our district, not only from the letters professional development, but also the curricular supports that we provisioned our teachers, including Letterland and Haggerty, which I spoke to earlier. And it has been remarkable to see the instructional shifts over the last 3 years in our elementary classrooms.
That's great, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you for the presentation. Board members will move to 7.03. 7.02 with our construction update. Mr. Brian Cone. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Kopicki. Is this not on? I guess it's not.
Brian, it doesn't work.
Oh, it doesn't work? Oh, boy. So this is our Department of Construction update for you, September 9th, 2024. Real quickly, we'll start with R. Brown McAllister. So the dedication and the open house were held just before the start of the school year. Obviously, it was well attended by community members, local officials, district leadership. You can see there on the first day of school, students and staff were welcomed to a fanfare of local law enforcement and staff greeting kids as they enter the school for the first day. Rogers Builders continues to address some minor punch list items that have popped up since the school did become operational. We're working with school leadership on the addition of a STEM immersive learning room. I think some of you may have engaged in that during the open house ceremony and saw what that was going to be about. Our day 14 enrollment, this is when I had put this presentation together, was right at 694 students. So we're just shy of 700 students at this school right now. We are working to get some additional benches and some things that have been identified out in the playground area. Teachers are realizing that with all the kids that are playing on the playgrounds, in order to monitor them, they really didn't have anywhere to sit. So we're working with Ray and his team and the facilities side to find them some seats out there in the playground. And the combined use of the Coltrane West Swing School car rider line, we weren't sure how this was going to work. Sharing those spaces, they are on separate times, but it has been successful, and we really have not had any issues with both lines queuing independently. The Coltrane Web parents know when they're supposed to come in, and they're not coming too early, so it seems to be flowing well. There's some kids in the media center. It does have a delay, doesn't it? There they are, recess in the gym. A real quick update on the signalization and roadway improvements. They are completed. All the pedestrian signals in and around those improvements are operational and running. There have been a couple of questions raised to us about the school zone signs that are on North and South Union Street as well as Wilshire. The City of Concord was replacing some hardware and software in those units. That was not a part of our package, but they are aware of the two schools and their schedules. They did email me this past Friday and said they'd received all the equipment and that they hoped within the week they would be operational. So we'll have our school zone flashing signs back operational on Union Street in Wilshire. There are some additional items we're going to do internally that weren't a part of the package. The existing crosswalk bars that are down at Oakland and a couple of additional bars up at the top of Oakland and Sunnyside that have been worn and just aren't very visible. With the number of walkers, bike riders that we have coming into the school, we felt like it was important from a safety perspective to restripe those areas. So we are going to be taking care of that actually this coming Saturday. And then that's looking north on Union Street. Sorry. It's going very fast. Are there any questions on our Brown McAllister?
Mr. Treadaway.
I do have one question.
Yes, sir.
At that intersection,
Yes, sir.
there's a pole that has a sign that says pole on it.
Yeah, I think a homeowner actually put that on because somebody ran into the pole about 6 or 7 months ago.
Happens more than you think, actually.
Well, I guess, so yeah. And I got asked, did we put the pole sign on there? I said, no, we didn't put the pole sign.
Okay, I was just curious.
Mr. Walter.
Yes, so the painting, is that something we're doing in-house, or is that something that Rogers Builder's doing? Who's
No,
doing
we have funding within the roadway package money that we're able to do it with. And the striping contractor that was a part of the roadway package, they're going to be taking care of it.
We'll come back and do that.
Yes,
and
they will. Yep.
No additional funding necessary.
No, sir.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Ms. Lindsay.
Sorry, this
Yes, ma'am.
actually has to do with crosswalks.
Oh, boy.
Not necessarily our Brown McAllister's crosswalk.
Okay.
But who handles those? If we needed a crosswalk at a school, for example, Pitt School Road onto Kim Street.
So Pitt School Road is a state maintained road, so it's North Carolina Department of Transportation, and they would be responsible for enlisting the study to confirm that it would warrant a crosswalk. We don't have the liberty or the luxury to say, hey, we think a crosswalk would be safe here for the kids. We want to go put it in. They do not give us that liberty. So we can enlist somebody at NCDOT that we work with in the signalization department to do, and they'll come out and they'll do a study. They'll kind of look at the impacts and make a recommendation as to whether a crosswalk would be justifiable at a certain location.
Okay, so I had a parent reach out to me, which is why I'm asking. So if I just sent you that information, you could.
And then I could get them in touch with the state. I mean, we could kind of start that process. Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
all right,
All right.
thank you.
Yep. Anything
Mr.
else?
Floyd.
Couple things about the car rider line. Want to make sure that everybody is as a parent who rides in the car rider line every day. I just want to say, first of all, to the R. Brown staff and to the SROs and everybody out there, what a great job they're doing, and Coltrane Web too. Day one was probably one of the worst day ones we've had, and I told everybody, be patient, hang in there. In about 2 weeks, it won't be great, but it'll be better. And day two was phenomenal, maybe better than the end of last year. So they did a great job of learning in one day and getting it together and helping everybody move quickly through there. A reminder to me and my fellow parents out there is how to be good neighbors as we go through that line. There's a lot of big, bright orange signs that my 4-year-old reads to me every morning. He says, "Please do not block driveway." And if she can read those, I hope that we all can too. We're going to be very, very careful and intentional about that because our neighbors that live there, and this is hard for them. We want to make sure that we're being good neighbors to them. Some of those neighbors have asked about things like, and you and I talked about this, but I want everybody to kind of hear it, speed bumps or temporary speed bumps during the construction time. Can you talk about what that would look like to investigate and who does that and everything?
So Sunnyside is the street Mr. Floyd is referring to, and that is a municipal street. We would first engage emergency management services because they're the ones most concerned about speed humps or traffic calming devices, as we call them, in order to facilitate getting to an emergency in a timely manner. If they are receptive to it, then we would engage transportation at the City of Concord, making sure that they were receptive to it as well. There are several styles of speed humps, bumps, traffic calming devices, as you want to call it, that are available to install on a temporary basis or measure, not on a permanent measure, that we could possibly consider doing if we felt like all parties involved were receptive to it. So, yes.
What would be the first step to looking into that?
I would call the fire marshal of City of Concord and reach out to him and say this has been a concern of the speed of traffic coming up and down.
And they would monitor it and see if it's a worthwhile concern.
Yeah, they would. They would. You know, they have a standard, obviously, in their UDO of what that traffic calming device looks like, so that their trucks can maneuver it. Again, they're really the first ones we need to get buy-in from before we take it to transportation.
Ms. Sandage?
I saw the 694 here. Can you remind us of the total capacity for that school?
Oh, the total capacity for R. Brown McAllister is 756 students.
So we close to being full already.
We are.
Nice. Okay. Thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions?
Okay. So just a quick update on the Northwest Cabarrus Tennis Court project. It is completed, as you can see there. We worked with the school leadership and the athletic department on what color selections they wanted, and as you can tell, it was a little bit different scheme than what we probably would have anticipated. Less traditional tennis court colors, but it seemed to blend in well with the new gymnasium addition that was done years back, and they were very excited about that. And they have been practicing on it, and I believe I had the first week of, or the week of August 26th, they held their first match, but I think they practiced that week, and then last week was when they held their first match at the new courts. Are you doing this? Yeah. Oh. Okay. I was like, man, I didn't even already touch the button that time. All right, next slide. Any questions on Northwest Cabarrus? Just as a quick update, we are scheduled the second week of October to begin mobilizing at Cox Mill High School to start on their courts. We've worked it out with the athletic department and Mr. Myers so that we could get in there as soon as the season was over to get started on those courts. And that will be the last of the 3 courts that we had approved to repair. All right, here's our update on the Cabarrus Health Sciences Institute. It seems and appears that everything is functioning smoothly at the modular campus that we installed. We've had a few items that we've had to address, but nothing major. Again, you know, these schools, as teachers and staff start using them, they begin to identify things that they felt like are important or they need. So we continue to work with them on making sure that we have the ability to provide what it is that they are asking for. We are continuing to work on some branding and graphics around that school with Ms. Short now. Since she was brought on, we've let her do a review of what those graphics look like, and she's had a few items that she'd like to add to that. So we were in a position to be able to push pause from where we were with Ms. Hyde and step in with Ms. Short and provide what she would like. We also, as a part of that, one of the main things that they wanted was an outdoor space, and so We were trying to see if we could acquire some existing tables and benches, but we were unable to do that. So we will be providing them with a couple picnic tables and some benches and some shade on the outdoor area. So on nice days like it has been recently, they can go outside and eat lunch and do a lot of independent study. So, and then the transportation, you know, we were a little unsure how that was going to look in and around the atrium campus because it's a busy campus, but it seems to flow very well. Matt Herlocker and the transportation department have been instrumental in making sure buses show up exactly when they need to load the kids, and our car riders seem to flow in and out of there very smoothly. So that's looking in the main, I guess you call it the dining area or multi-purpose space. In any one time during the day, there could be 30 or 40 kids in there just independently studying as a part of their program. And that's the entrance into that multi-purpose space, and there's the teacher workroom in the background and the check-in office there on the right. There's one of our standard classrooms over in the classroom building, and just another shot of the available seating capacity that we have in that multi-purpose room. Any questions on health science?
Mr. Walter?
Yeah, what's the lifespan of that facility, those buildings, and how much maintenance do we anticipate having every year?
As long as we maintain the major part, you know, the mechanical systems, the plumbing systems, things of that nature. Cosmetically, you know, a paint job, you know, depending on the wear and tear and what the weather looks like, you could get 5 to 7 years out of the paint job, and you may need to start touching things up. You know, the lifespan of the units themselves, Chuck, 10 to 15 years before you start having to doing major things, or you get a little bit longer?
Yeah, in that range.
Yeah, so.
Start doing repair work, but we literally have the capability to build them from the frame up.
Yeah, so. Yes, sir.
And have.
Ms. Escobar?
Thank you.
Yeah.
This outdoor space for these kids, is it in the parking lot, in between the buildings? Is there a deck?
And I apologize, I did not have an aerial. It's in between the two buildings. So we essentially, between the two buildings, we created the transitional space between the multi-purpose dining area, administrative, and then the classroom wing. And that's how the kids kind of flow back and forth. And we were able to capture about 800 or 900 square feet of space outdoor, just kind of a flat deck area. You know, they're not locked into that area, but it's a nice secure environment for them to sit at. Got railings around it. It actually looks over the old clubhouse building, actually, is what it looks over there at the atrium campus. So.
Okay, so similar to the early college where they have some picnic tables outside,
yes.
That kind of thing.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Mr.
Yes, sir.
Floyd?
In addition to that, they got decent shade out there. You made me think about that with the early college. I think they're cooking outside sometimes. How does that look for them? And then on that subject, do you know the early college is cooking?
It's very sunny out there, so you will get a suntan at this point. But that was one of the items that Ms. Short and I have looked at figuring out to some kind of shade structure that we can put in between those two units to provide some protection from the sun.
I have an idea on that.
Okay, that'd be great. All right, quick update on the Opportunity School. So we have completed the design development review with all our facilities and maintenance teams. New Atlantic has brought on J.W. Wilson Construction out of Denver, North Carolina as the pre-engineered metal building contractor for this project. What we will do is we'll begin working with J.W. Wilson, New Atlantic, and the design team on the specific design elements of a pre-engineered metal building and how that looks with the wall structures and the sections. And because you have mainframes, it's a little bit different animal than what we're traditionally building with load-bearing masonry or standard structural steel. So it was in our advantage to bring them on board because of the detailing that goes into that. You could spend a lot of time and effort in doing it on the front end, and then when you bring somebody on, you'd have to go back and change that. So we, as a team, felt like it was important to bring them on board now. We have finalized the preliminary guarantee maximum price that was requested by Cabarrus County and will be presented later on tonight for conditional approval. Again, this current schedule has grading operations starting in February of 25, so not too far away. And we are continuing to track the August 2026 opening date for the Opportunity School. That's our BIM model, just of the elevation of the school right there in front of you. And then that's a model a little bit closer up of what the front entrance will look like as staff and visitors would come to the school. Any questions on the Opportunity School?
Ms. Sandage?
So at one given point, how many students do we generally have at the Opportunity School? I see 150 capacity.
We average probably between, I'd say, during the course of the year, somewhere in the area of, say, 60 to 100 students.
So we've never had any capacity issues.
Since I've been here, now entering my 4th year, we've not exceeded that 150 mark. No, we've had no capacity issues.
Okay, thank you.
All right, update on Coultram Webb Beverly Hills STEM Replacement School project. So the geotechnical work has taken place in and around that campus, all the soil borings and test pitting that we needed to do as part of the seismic design, helping us better understand what the soil conditions look like far enough down so that we know what our structure and footings and foundation will need to be designed like. Rogers Builders has completed the pre-bid meetings for the demo package of this project, and it was actually bid on September the 5th last week. They are in the process of de-scoping those bids right now, and we will have that for you at the October meetings, the demo package for approval. The hazardous abatement bids were received by the Facilities Department on Monday, August the 26th. And they are anticipated to begin here in the next week or so on the abatement of that school as well. The design development drawings that were completed as a part of this with the design team have been submitted to North Carolina Department of Public Instruction and DOI for their review process at this phase. We also have this preliminary guarantee maximum price that was requested by the county and will be presented tonight for conditional approval by you. Demolition on this school is slated to begin in mid-October on the current schedule that we have. And we have identified a construction update meeting for the community that will be held on September the 17th at the new R. Brown McAllister Elementary School. Yes, ma'am. I didn't even get to ask if anybody has any questions.
Ms. Sandage?
Do we have a time scheduled for this meeting on the 17th?
That meeting starts at 6 o'clock. Is that right, Dr. Kubicki?
6 o'clock start time till 7:30 p.m., correct?
Okay, and we have a location. The other question I had was, is there an agenda for this meeting?
We'll have a presentation. We'll put a kind of just a very informal agenda out of what the presentation will cover, yes.
Okay, and then the other question I had was in relation to the funding to be able to start building this school. I want to understand, like, if there is a true holdup for beginning construction on this school.
So let me lead into that, and Brian, that kind of goes to the communication we talked about this afternoon and you did reply to.
Yes.
So I would ask you to, in your comments before you finish this evening, to answer those questions for the board in terms of that one communication.
Sure. I think the questions to those will
they're kind of coming out now, right? Yeah. So, like, for example, one of these here, I'm looking at this, the demolition being slated to begin in mid-October. This similar presentation like this was given for the Beverly Hills building when it was prepared to be demolished as well, which will begin tomorrow. And I'll let Mr. Cohen finish that conversation. In terms of funding, as the board knows, we start our budget process now for next year, and we'll come to you in April, and then in May and June are those 3 key months for the school system. And as you know, what takes place is we come to the board, we ask your approval, the board approves our budget. Myself and Mr. Penn then go to the county management, the county commissioners and their group, and we present that budget to them. That usually takes place late April, early May. And then around mid-June, the county will approve their budget, and they will come back and inform Phil Penn and myself as to what they've approved. And that includes our capital project budget as well, so we'll know what's been approved. This year, the county did approve our 2 elementary schools that we asked to be built. One was the replacement school here that you see at Coultram Webb Beverly Hills. The other was a new school either in the northwest part of the district or the southwestern part of the district. It's to be determined. We are in the process. I know we've acquired land in the southern part of the district. We are close to acquiring land in the northern part of the district.
Yes, sir.
If we acquire the land in the northwest part of the district, our recommendation would be to build that one first. If not, then we would go in the southern part of the district, along with building this particular building, which would, the request there was the $100 million. As you know, the $11 million was approved in a previous year's budget for the Mary Frances Wall Replacement School, and we also asked for the $10 million plus for the Opportunity School this year, along with a couple other smaller projects. So when that money is, when those projects are approved, the county then has to go to the local government commission in Raleigh and meet with that group. That's a 9-member board. It's my understanding there are 4 ex officio folks on that, and then 5 members that are appointed by various legislators throughout the state. The governor has appointees, the Senate has appointees, etc. They have an agenda on their monthly meetings when they take place, and then they go through those agendas. They can ask questions of anyone that's on those agendas, and they either approve it or don't approve it. The school projects have not yet come to the LGC commission for a vote. I spoke with county management today to be as updated as I could for this meeting, and it is our understanding that the county management anticipates that our school projects will be on the October agenda with the local government commission. I know there are other things that are going through the local government commission that is causing some, my words, no one else's, some controversial discussions. But the school projects do not appear to be amongst those topics. So it is anticipated that and hoped for that the local government commission will approve the funding for the schools in their October meeting. And it is my understanding that a lot of the discussion is over the way that the county funds the projects, whether they are local geo bonds or limited obligation bonds or private placement bonds, correct. So that's the discussion. That decision is out of our hands, and that is totally at the county level and the state level with the local government commission board deciding that. What I can say is we've done all we can from a school system, and we've done our recommendations to the county. The county has been supportive of our ask, and we now wait and see what happens in October. If they get approved in October, we fully anticipate this timeline and this time schedule to follow through. As you know, it's my understanding too, again, that it's like every 2 years they go through this process and they ask for the funding for the various capital projects that are funded in the Cabarrus County school system. But right now, we're beholden to that decision in October. I don't want to think about if that gets rejected, because that just opens up a whole other pathway for us to go down, and would put us in significant dire straits in terms of capacity for our schools. As you pointed out very quickly, 694 is close to 756 in terms of the R. Brown McAllister school that we built. And they are not large, giant schools. They are good size, I would say mid-range, to a closing in on a large school system for capacity. You don't want to get, I mean, we have a couple schools that are very large. They're probably, they're run very well. They're less than ideal though. You're teetering on what's that too big size, right? Which is open for always debate. But we are building good mid-sized schools to address our capacity, and as long as our capital project plan continues to move forward into the future, we should be able to address our capacity very well. But we do need schools. As we said from the get-go, realignment alone will not get us out of the growth patterns that we're seeing. Realignment will help balance our capacity, but it will not sustain us. As the board knows very well, our modular units are that's no longer an option for us, because we have no room for modular units, and they are only short-term solutions, not the safest, best option. But if we continue to follow through on our building projects long-term in the next several years, we should be in good shape. And that includes down the road, you're looking at Northwest High School, looking at Central Cabarrus High School, you're looking at possibly a Southern High School, and some other projects. We talked a lot about, the other thing that we've talked a lot about that we need to continue to keep on the burner is the deferred maintenance for all the schools that we have to continue to talk about. So Those discussions will continue to take place, but again, it's the local government commission right now that kind of holds our fate for what occurs in the very near future. I will update the board as I am informed, and the county continues to keep us updated as well.
Mr. Floyd?
I wasn't finished.
Go ahead.
The other thing that I was going to say is, so the buck really is and truly is not with us, and if there are people who are concerned in the community and they want to do or say something to somebody, who do we direct them to? Because it almost appears that we're the folks that are stopping this, and we are not.
No, our school board has been very supportive of our plans and our capital projects, have been very well informed, have asked the right questions, have been an active participant in those both short-term and long-term projects, and have been very supportive of addressing the issues that are before us in a capital project sense, and have advocated strongly for them, both at the county level and state level. At this point, I would say if you're going to reach out to anyone, to reach out to your I think your state senators are who you should go to. And we've had very good conversation with Senator Newton, who has been very supportive of the system. Myself and Mr. Penn met with Senator Newton last week, had a very good conversation with him. It's been very supportive. And I wouldn't hesitate to reach out to the commission members themselves. You can get on the website on North Carolina State Treasurer's website, and if you kind of finagle your way through that, you'll find the board and who to reach out to. I believe they have emails listed there as well on that site. You can email that particular commission and express your opinions and the needs that we have in this district that for these projects. So no, it is not anything we've done. Our board's been very supportive and done well, I believe, in promoting the projects that we have proposed. And Mr. Cohn, have I missed anything in terms of the process or how that works out?
No, sir, and I'll provide a little bit more clarity to how we're doing the things we're doing now for you as I get into the end of the presentation.
Thank you.
I
I'm
know
sorry
that's
for
probably going to
cutting
be
you
your next
off.
question. So.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Floyd?
On the subject of the local government commission, or LGC, as people talk about a lot, they meet tomorrow. We're not on that agenda. The Cabarrus County is not on that agenda. The item that we're supposedly behind is not on that agenda. I don't know who set said agenda or why they would leave us off, but they did, which pushes us even further down the line. It almost feels like we're being stalled out. I don't know why. And yes, the buck is not something that we can control, but I will say, as advocates for the schools, which is what we should be, I should hope, is that we would step up and do everything we can in the community and to advocate and to reach out. I watch the LGC meetings. I've listened to exactly their problems. I understand finance very well, and I understand their problems very well, and I understand the gap between the two very well. I would encourage other people to do the same, and I would encourage people to reach out to them. And you can find their information and reach out to them. Somebody's reached out to them. If you watched the last meeting, it feels very personal, very personal. And I take major issue with our kids being toyed with like that, is how it feels like to me. And I'm just, whatever. I'm going to say it. Maybe that's not something I should be saying here, but I have a big issue with that. If people want to play games, they can play games. That's fine. But leave our kids and our schools out of it. We got work to do. These are projects that have been approved. They have been funded, or they should be funded. The funding has been approved. And to get involved behind the scenes at this level for something that's gone through the proper channels is, I don't have a word for it, but we should not be allowing that to happen. And we should be paying attention, and we should be standing up for these projects and for our county and for our kids. And that's really, well, it's not all I have to say about that, but that's all I'm saying about it right now.
Anything else, board members, on that subject?
All right. That's just a quick model that Rogers Builders had put together, representative of the phases of demolition. Phase 1 is that initial kind of dirt area there you see in the front. And you can see the 70s portion building, and then the older school building would be a part of the Phase 2 demolition. A quick update on the Mary Frances Wall project. So Lyles Construction did mobilize the week of the 23rd to begin installation of their more permanent temporary construction fencing. We have completed our design reviews with the F&D department as well, and currently the design team are inputting those comments as needed into the construction documents. YCH Architects, the design team, has also submitted these plans to North Carolina Department of Public Construction and Department of Insurance for their design development reviews. We did receive the all clear from the abatement company on the hazardous materials. That's a big thing to get before you allow any further demolition efforts to take place in a building. We will also be presenting to you a preliminary guaranteed maximum price as requested by Cabarrus County for conditional approval as well on this project this evening. The demolition GMP obviously was approved at the August Board of Education meeting and is slated to begin this week, as Dr. Kopicki referenced. And we do continue to track August of 2026 for an opening date on the Mary Frances Hall project. And that's the main entrance there. And then there's just an overall model of the new facility with the existing portion there in the upper part of that image. And that was all I had. Are there any? I do. Let me go over the questions the community member had provided to the board. I meant to do that. So I tried that. They were a little all over the place, and I tried to paraphrase some of these questions. And I'll be happy to share these, I guess, with the board if you would like. So there were some questions around the funding for these projects, specifically the demolition of Beverly Hills and how that got approved. So what has happened is a portion of the funding was approved by Cabarrus County earlier this year for several of our projects. We're speaking specifically to the Mary Frances Wall. But they preemptively fund us a pot of money so that we can get started on drawings and engineering, and if there are demolition efforts that need to take place, so that when they do secure that permanent larger debt financing, we're in a position to get started so that we maintain the timelines that we had established. So to answer your question as to what money we're using, it is approved money that the county has in place and was approved by the commissioners that we're able to use. And it's for this school, it's for the Opportunity School, it's for Coltram Webb's project as well, and it's for the Northwest or Southwest area elementary school as well. They approved $1.5 million for the 2 elementary schools, and then they approved up to $1 million on the Opportunity School and on the Mary Frances Wall project. I also received a question about the timing on the demolition efforts for the Mary Frances Wall or the Beverly Hills campus. We had presented that it was a 60-day demolition effort, and that still holds true. This member of the community said, would that be completed in early October? Well, had we started probably when we had approved the contracts, yeah, we would be getting close. But obviously with the agreement and the promise to not demolish the chimney until the Swifts are gone, we have sequenced the job such so that that does not happen. But it is still a 60-day duration. So you kind of take the 60 days from this week, give or take, and that's what the duration of the demolition will take. She had also questioned the funding for Mary Frances Wall, kind of what Dr. Kopicki had just spoken to, and how that is affecting what we are doing. She asked if there were delays, or if there were delays, did that impact the cost? And certainly it does. You start pushing out the construction timeline, and as we've been presenting over the last few months, our industry as a whole sees 5% annually on escalation as costs continue to rise. So it tags about a 1.25% per quarter for an impacted cost on what we do. You delay demolition, that kind of pushes the whole schedule down the line, and so there would be cost impacts with that. To say exactly what that is on the bigger project is probably a little bit of a guessing game right now, but we had to go through some exercises with the demolition company, and if we continue to delay that demolition, we're looking at $3,500 to $4,000 a week by just holding that team in place, which is what we're doing because they were already identified. We can't let them go. So there are cost impacts for delays, whether it's on the demolition side or on the site development and construction side. And I think that was all that she had asked, but I'll be happy to share these responses with you.
Ms. Sandy.
Okay. So is there a better way for people in the community that have questions to get their questions answered besides, they can always go to various board members and send a message to the board, but a lot of the times they are saying that they've already reached out and they are unable to get a response. So is there a better way for us to interface with the community so they don't feel like we're their last resort? and we're here always, right? We have the responsibility to our constituents, but if they can go through the staff, I think that's the best way to handle it, in my personal opinion.
So I would say that's a good point, and the answer is yes. I would say the staff is always the best way to go, because then we have a process that we use to answer questions. However, I'm never going to stop the public nor would I want them to stop reaching out to the board members. And as the board knows, if you send it to us, we will make sure we get the answers back. This particular situation was a little sensitive because of the litigation that was going on, so we had to make sure that we were following the recommendations from our legal team and the legal advice as to what we said and didn't say. But in terms of communicating out to the answers and response, I think we're pretty effective and good at that. I know our staff is excellent at making sure they answer questions if we're asked. I think you all see that on a regular basis. When you ask a question, it'll be CC'd to the appropriate person, you'll get the right response. And if there's ever delay, what I would encourage you to do is to reach out and let me know so we can make sure we get on it immediately. But I think this particular one was a little sensitive because of the litigation.
Mr. Floyd?
I have one more question. On Mary Frances Wall and I think Coltrane Webb here, we've got track in August 2026 is our ready to step foot in the building day. You also brought up a good point just now about delays, which we seem to keep finding their way to us. What happens if we don't finish the school until October 2026? Do they just pack up in the middle of their third period and move? Or do they have to wait a whole nother school year? What happens if we keep getting unnecessarily delayed?
You usually don't go down that road, so it's not an option.
I don't want to go down that road, but it seems like we might want to.
And it's a valid question, and you want to take it, Dr. Kapicki?
Well, I think there's a lot of things. I think there's a lot of what ifs, right? I don't like. I know none of us like to live in the hypothetical, but because it's not where we are. However, to your point, if we are delayed and we continue to grow the way we are, the northwest part of the district and the southwest part of the district, you're looking at probably capping schools at some point because we don't have the space to continue to enroll kids in those buildings. So that would be one of the consequences that would be very serious that we'd have to undertake to look at to what the capacity is in those areas, which is why we need these schools to be built to make sure we're addressing some of that capacity growth. And that would affect transportation, that would affect education, that would affect, as Mr. Cohen pointed out, the cost of things, and it's just a domino effect on a lot of other things too.
So it sounds like time is very serious, and we should be taking it seriously, not playing.
Yeah, no, I think the next month is going to indicate to us as to the direction we're going to go in. It has been my understanding, again, that the October meeting was the meeting that was targeted for the LGC to make that decision. I have asked a question if we could be put on earlier, and I was told no, that was not going to be possible, but we were on the October meeting, and we fully anticipate to be on that meeting. If that comes to fruition, we should be pretty good with our timeline. If it doesn't, that's going to be a tight timeline. If it doesn't,
It is, yes.
if it does not come true, then that's going to be that's where some of these other contingency plans may have to start being discussed. Mr. Cohen, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think just to be very transparent that if it's not met at the October meeting, the next LGC meeting, I believe, is February. They take November.
Did you say February?
I believe that is correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So.
Mr. Walter?
Yeah, in the past we've planned on a New Year's opening on some of the schools.
I was going to say
that wasn't
a mid-year
necessary,
opening is always an option.
But that was something that was planned for last time.
Sorry, go ahead.
Are we going to have a community meeting for the Mary Frances Wall like we are for the Coltrane Webb? I mean, is that on the table?
We had not planned to have a community meeting for that project. We've shared the model and the animation of the rendering of the project. It's such a small site.
I've seen a request for a meeting, so I don't know if.
Well, I think over the last year we've pretty much addressed that and been redundant as to what the plan is through the meetings every month at the school board meetings. I think we've been.
Well, you could say the same thing for the Coltrane Webb, but I don't know. I mean, if you're treating one group, you're having a community meeting, but we're not the other one. I don't think that's quite fair.
Ms. Escobar?
Is it possible that you could discuss both plans at this upcoming meeting for Culture and Web? Because in theory, if you're looking for a meeting regarding that community, they would be impacted by the construction and you could get two birds.
We can meet and discuss that, yes.
Okay.
I think that's it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to move to 7.03, our financial update with Mr. Phil Penn. Welcome, Mr. Penn.
Good evening, Madam Chair, board members, Dr. Kapicki. Thanks for the opportunity to come up and speak tonight on what's been a very busy month of August and beginning of September for the finance team. But before I begin, just to piggyback on the funding for some of this pre-construction, just to tie a couple of dots together, if you go back to budget amendment number 6, which you approved in June, you'll actually see where the money came through for that. So just so the public's got some record to go back to for when that money came through from the county. August 30th was our first big payroll of the fiscal year, with all the 10-month instructional staff back on the payroll at that point. As you can expect, there was a lot of work working with HR and with the payroll team to make sure any new staff were correctly entered into the payroll system, and then all the roughly 5,000 full and part-time staff were paid accurately at the end of the month. With that big payroll now complete, it gives us the opportunity to use that actual data to extrapolate out all the payroll accounts across all our different funding sources to put together budgets across our local funding, our state funding, our federal funding. That work's going to culminate in October when we bring our initial 24-25 budget resolution to you. In October, that's also when we're going to resume our regular monthly financial reporting that we developed for you last year as well. So that is on the way. Our external auditors, Anderson, Smith, and Wyke, were on site for their annual field work and testing just before Labor Day. There were only 2 minor audit entries as a result of that work, which is an incredibly successful audit that is next to nothing to have coming out of an audit like that. We expect in October, the firm's going to be presenting highlights of the audited financials for the 23-24 year, including an audited fund balance, very similar to the presentation that they did for you last year. What you're likely to hear in that presentation is an absolute increase in fund balance of about $2 million from where we were at the end of the 22-23 year. But candidly, the way I would look at it, it's actually closer to a $4 million increase once you adjust for the one-time funds that we received from the county right before the end of that year and did spend a pretty good chunk of before we put the halt on spending. That obviously is going to raise some questions around what do we do with the fund balance. As you might expect as your CFO, I would caution you to not use fund balance for anything that would be ongoing cost. That's a dangerous practice. As an example, Dr. Kapicki, Mr. Sain, and I have been talking about our computer needs for the remainder of the 24-25 year, and since the county didn't provide any funding for computer replacements, I think a logical use to consider would be about $1.9 million of our fund balance to cover those computer needs. In addition, we could have conversations around something that would be something much more than a one-year change, a decade longer, if we started having conversations around a comprehensive K-8 ELA curriculum, which is a conversation I've had with Ms. Reeves over the past few weeks. Those would fall within the guidelines of the new fund balance policy as a large unbudgeted expense, but let me stress that there's no decisions to be made tonight on that. I'm just kind of putting a preview out there for you of what could be a bigger conversation that would start in October once we have that audited fund balance. We've also been working over the past few weeks with the transportation and HR teams to try to come up with some creative ways that we can attract new bus drivers to the Cabarrus County schools. That can include shrinking the number of steps on the pay scale. It can include doing an across-the-board pay increase or some hybrid between the two. That work is ongoing at this point, so I do not have any conclusive decisions to share with you, but it's actively being worked on right now. One last thing I just wanted to point out to you, there was a state funding issue that I'm happy to say got resolved, and I'm very grateful to Dr. Williams for texting me at about 10 o'clock on Friday night, something he typically doesn't do, and I was very concerned about what am I finding out about from the head of HR at 10 o'clock on a Friday night. But as it turns out, when the state adopted its 24-25 budget, it moved to a funding in arrears model for school districts. And what that means is that our initial budgets for the 24-25 year were based on our actual enrollment of either month 1 or month 2 of last year, whichever of the two was higher. So using Cabarrus as an example, our initial allotment was based on last year's ADM, average daily membership, of 34,984. Now, if you remember what Dr. Kapicki said about where our ADM sits right now, we're 300 people above that number, 300 students above that, with continuing to growth, right? We still project we're adding at least another 300 or so into that number going forward. What that meant was that for districts that experienced growth in their ADM for year over year, a new funding stream was to be created and distributed sort of across the state for districts that experienced that. But when the state initially implemented the 24-25 budget, at the end of the regular portion of the short session that they had, that ADM growth wasn't put in the budget. So you probably heard over the weekend there was news about that funding now coming into place. It's from having read the legislation, it's about a $95 million item now that's going to be in that PRC. I don't know what that translates to for Cabarrus County schools yet. However, I will tell you that I'm certainly hopeful that it's going to equate to at least $1.6 million for us, because that's what I figure we probably would lose out on otherwise because of this funding in arrears model. In other words, if you were to look at what we're allocated right now for classroom teachers versus where I think we should be once they adjust for the ADM growth, it's about a 30 teacher difference. And so just in that one PRC related to teachers, that's at least a $1.6 million impact. And there's other derivative PRCs, transportation, teaching assistants, instructional supplies. There's all the other ones that I've shared with you before that are linked to your ADM number that also become impacted by this. So that will probably make the November budget adjustments very messy, because as I understand it, those $95 million gets distributed through a single PRC, which we then now need to parcel out to where it's actually needed in the budget. So I would expect sort of a lengthy review of budget transfers, unfortunately, during the month of November once this eventually drops. Questions?
Ms. Escobar?
Thank you. As far as action related, I recognize this is a preview, but I'm just thinking about transportation right now, because we're all getting it. We're all getting messages from parents and things, and we're now beyond the point of the first week jitters. So how quickly are we looking at making a decision or making a proposal to us about that?
Well, as Dr. Williams reminded me, we should probably check with Labor Council on this before we go and do anything. So that's at least a piece of it.
So we have a proposal prepared for the board, but to Mr. Penn's point, we're going through Labor Council first to make sure that we're squared away on this. There are some things we want to make sure we're not open. We want to make sure we have context correctly, that the decision we made doesn't impact negatively other areas of the district. But we will have a recommendation probably coming to the board shortly, as long as we're legally in line.
That's great. I just want to know that we're acting quickly. This is something I would like to do sooner rather than later.
We talk about transportation every single day, without question. Just ask Dr. Bowers.
Ms. Sandage?
So mine was in relation to transportation as well. How dare you give us that information and then there is nothing behind it? We are all getting it. She said it very well. So I would be interested in understanding what that looks like and when we will have more information. The other question was in relation to when we will have the information as to how Cabarrus is impacted by this $95 million, or I think I said that right.
So there wasn't much in the legislation that spoke to timing, although I would have to be a believer that if they were going to do this correctly, they would wait until after we knew what month 2 ADM was this year. Today was day 20. 4 weeks from today, I believe, makes it day 40 in the end of month 2. So we will have some idea 4 weeks, I think, from now about what that money is going to drop as.
4 weeks, you said?
Correct.
Thank you. And thank you for the presentation. I appreciate it.
If I may, not to beat a dead drum, I apologize, Mrs. Adcock. The transportation issue really boils down to people. We need drivers. We can come up with a lot of solutions and a lot of recommendations, and you have been great in working with us and even improving that from a pay standpoint. But it's people, folks. We need drivers. So anybody and everybody that can get us more drivers, we need you all to help advocate for us, because that really is what it is. Because some of the things that we looked at, including we bus a little over 25,000. I'll tell you exactly what it is. It's 25,000.
While you looking, I'm sure we've done
Yes,
this,
ma'am, I
but I
have.
know there's some very strategic and very, thought-provoking things that are happening across different districts related to transportation, because this is a everywhere problem.
Yep.
I don't know that we've looked at those things. I think we started doing hubs and all that good stuff, and that this is the reason to address that. And we might be getting transportation a little later, so I could be misspeaking, but
So right now we're transporting 25,737 students. Last year we were at 24,902, so roughly 800 more kids we're transporting. There are 1,308 runs this year. There were 1,292 last year. So again, you're looking at an increase there. The routes are 243 to 240. It's about a standoff. Drivers, right now we have 196. We had 208 last year when we closed the school year down, so we're down drivers. We have 2 more part-time drivers than last year and 5 less sub-drivers. This is a numbers game, no matter how you cut this up. We need people, we need bodies. Mr. Whitaker and his team have been unbelievable to do what they're doing. And roughly, we transport everybody. It's 1.5 miles is the distance, and we're transporting anybody in the district who wants to get on a bus. So roughly 65% of our kids are getting on a bus to come to school. We're even looking at the half-mile numbers to give to the board to look at to consider that as well. But then even when you do that, let's say you looked at that as maybe an option to create more runs and more walkers, is it a hazardous route? Are there sidewalks? Is it safe? There's a lot of again, a lot of things when you make a decision that you don't want to make a decision that dominoes into more problems for yourself. So again, repeating myself, it is a numbers game. We need drivers. We need people that will work in the transportation department. It is a great place to work. It's a great environment to work in. We will work with anybody that has ideas, that wants to come to us, that needs a flex schedule. Whatever we can do to work with you, we will do that. But we need drivers. So I thank you for that. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Mr. Walters?
I think I almost forgot my question. The arrears, you guys had a meeting with Senator Newton. Was that discussed? What was his point of view?
I don't know that that came up as a topic, did it? Other than the fact that we mentioned that that was out there as an issue.
We did not talk about that with him. Mr. Penn has put together a really brief summation of that we're going to send to Mr. Newton this week.
Yeah.
Oh, Mr. Treadway.
Yeah, I just want to make sure everyone understands that this whole arrears model hurts kids because it means we have to move kids. When we finally get the funding for teachers, we're having to reallocate who goes to what. Mrs. Jones is not your teacher anymore. Mrs. Smith might be your teacher because we just hired Mrs. Smith. These policies hurt kids, and I hate to bring up something last minute. I like to always give you a chance at it before I bring it up. But this happened during our meeting. We were notified that the legislature has moved $463 million into private vouchers, additional. Now I just want to do a little bit of quick math, and this is in my head. There's 1.5 million students in North Carolina, so it's a little over $300 per student is going to private vouchers, additional, times 35,000 students in Cabarrus County. That's $10.5 million. What would we do with $10.5 million? Would computers maybe be on the radar?
I'm sure we would find a way to spend it.
I don't think there's any more questions.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we will go to 8.01 policies for approval on second reading.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Dr. Pickey, members of the board. I am here standing in for Dr. Ward to present 4 policies that are up for second reading tonight. We have prohibition against retaliation, technology in the educational program, extracurricular activities and student organizations, and local athletic eligibility. We are on second read, so I'm open to answering any questions at the pleasure of the board.
Any other questions about these policies, board members? Ms. Sandage?
I just asked if there was anything from the board members who sit on the policy committee. Any thoughts?
No, the local athletic eligibility, that one was, it is a local policy. It was not from the PLS. but it was just language to make sure that we're painfully clear about domicile and eligibility and what school students can participate for.
Mr. Walter?
Yeah, there was no recommendation of changing that policy. There was an option to, but they did not.
We wanted to align that policy with our practice. So it wasn't specifically laid out in our policy, so that's what we did in this update.
And I think the technology one
Thank y'all.
Technology one had to do with the cell phone to make that under alignment. Is that?
Yes, so technology, we had removed section C as an outdated initiative, and also it aligns with our new commonly referred to as cell phone plan, but really our electronic device plan, which is 4318.
Did we get any other comments from any staff or anybody else over the last month?
I have not received any.
Okay, board members, are we all in agreement to put this on the consent agenda for our September 16th business session? Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move to 8.02 Hickory Ridge High School roof replacement with Mr. Chuck Taylor. Welcome, Mr. Taylor.
Good evening, board members. Dr. Kopicki. I'm here tonight to ask you to consider approving the bid that was submitted in your agenda package for Davco. Total price is $1,772,478. That's for a roof replacement at Hickory Ridge High. It includes alternate one, which is all the existing outbuildings, and also the cow wall, the skylight inside the school. If you've ever noticed it in there, it's very large, and at this point it's very dark. So we need to replace it. So with that, are there any questions? Of course, this is all pending funding, as Dr. Kopicki had explained earlier. It's tied up with that. Are there any questions?
So this was budgeted for, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We had an approved budget from the county of $2,550,000. We've received favorable bidding. The low bid was the $1,772,478. The high bid was actually a little over $3 million. So we had a wide range. We had a lot of bidders.
Mr. Walter?
Okay, so you're saying that it's held up. How long can these bids stay before you have to rebid it, or how good are they, or how much time do we have?
Well, typically we have about 6 months.
6 months?
Yes, sir.
Even with the change? Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Sandage?
I have a general question, and this may not be a you question. Do we have a full-scale understanding of all of the things that are being held up and the impact for that? And where is that at? Do we have copies of that?
We do.
Yes, ma'am.
Can that be provided to us? I mean, it sounds like we are potentially, just kicking the can down the road a little bit, and prices are going to go up. And I just want to know if we have a full understanding of that impact.
We do understand. We have a full understanding of it. We know what projects they are, and Chuck, Brian, and Dr. Bauer's team can get that to us tomorrow.
And this is all on the LGC? Do I understand that correctly?
Yes, ma'am.
That's ridiculous, but okay. You gonna send that to us correctly?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Ms. Escobar?
Chuck, you've been around for a long time. Have you ever seen the
Are you saying I'm old?
I'm just saying you've worked for us a long time and you've been doing great work with the little bit that you get every time. Have you ever seen the LGC be involved in this and held up anything like this before?
No, ma'am.
Thank
Never.
you.
Okay. I think we'll move on to the next project. Are we all in agreement to put this on consent for our next meeting? Okay.
I'm sorry. How do we consent if we don't? This is a question for another day. Thank you.
So, ma'am, I think your question, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself, but if we do not receive funding, these projects die on the vine and they go to another year, a subsequent year. Does that answer your question?
It does. So us consenting just allows for you to wait.
Yes, ma'am, to find out what's going to happen with the LGC.
Yeah, this is
pending
beyond
their
me.
approval.
Thank you.
If I may say, there's a line from Mr. Delmore Schwartz. Time is the fire in which we burn. We're burning.
Okay. Let's move to 8.03, Weddington Hills Elementary School mechanical update.
So, if I may, both of these projects are the same. So, for Weddington Hills and Concord High School, we've opted, pending funding, same thing with the roof, to go with a cooperative purchase, which is one of the exemptions that's allowed by state statute. Okay, and the company that we're going with, and I'm going to lean on Miss Lindsay and Mr. Walter on this to help me, because they are the only ones on the board today that have been through this presentation. It was back in, the first portion of it was December 3rd of 2018. You guys voted for it then, so I need you to vote for it now. Okay? I'm sure I can recite it. If you can, I can. So, cooperative purchasing is basically where more than one government agency goes in and gets together and bids projects. There are organizations out there, such as Omnia. Sourcewell is another name. There used to be NJPA, but I think Omnia has absorbed those companies. But they pre-bid all this for us. They meet all the state requirements. So they have already done all this administrative work for us. And we have chosen a company called Schneider Electric. We used them when we did Mount Pleasant High School and when we did J.N. Freeze. Those were two of the best projects I've done at Cabarrus County Schools ever. I had very few problems. You actually get the added benefit of the CMR at risk type deal. Okay, CMR at risk gives you a lot more latitude and doesn't allow bad products to slip in. You have more control over it. This is the same type of procedure. It's just going through a different thing. I call it a pre-bid contract vehicle. It's also called group purchasing, but it is allowed for. Both of these projects are that way. Concord High School, we're going to go from a 2-pipe system to 4-pipe. I wanted to make sure I told you that tonight. Mr. Floyd and Mr. Treadway, I can depend on to tell you what it's like to be in a school that has 2 pipes. So the difference is I can change a school that's 4-pipe over in a day. It takes me 3 to 5 days to change over a school from heat to cold on a 2-pipe system. So when you got students and parents and everybody giving you feedback about how long it's taking to switch over, if it's an older school with a 2-pipe system, this is why. It's very important that everybody understands that. Okay? So with that, are there any questions on the mechanical projects?
Any questions?
It's going to be a similar question. Is how long can they hold those prices?
So with that, I would say 6 months
Same.
at a minimum.
Okay. So
The mechanical projects are a little different because this is more of a collaboration between Cabarrus County Schools maintenance and Schneider Electric. I have the ability, if we are coming up short in certain areas for the funding, to augment that work with our labor force. So it can become a hybrid of sorts. So we have a lot more control over it.
it's still a $16 million. Just a little increase would be substantial. So
It's a lot of money, but it's necessary. Years ago, I told the board in the budget committee meetings that we were going to be on a J curve, and those failures were going to go up. Mr. Penn is seeing the effect of those failures and where we're at on that J curve right now. We actually had to set up a specific account this year to make sure we had enough money for HVAC repairs. Because the operating budget, by the way, is too low and needs to be raised.
But these projects have been listed for quite some time.
Yes, sir.
And they were approved by the county this year for this budget. Is that right?
Yes, sir. You asked about the LGC earlier. we are finally at a point to where we're turning the corner on these huge maintenance items that we have to complete, that the kids depend on us for. If we don't continue that, we just go right back to where we were. That's what I don't want to see that. You've got several schools you talked about you want to build. I get it. Growth is very important. Maintaining the 45 buildings you already have is just as important. I need everybody to understand that, because I've been here a long time, but I'm not going anywhere.
Ms. Sandage.
So I just want to make this crystal clear, Chuck. So when will we have the information of what the potential impact is? Because to me, this sounds like mismanagement of taxpayer dollars. If we're waiting and there's a possibility that there are going to be increases because we are waiting and we are delayed by some entity. Does that make sense? When
Yes,
will
ma'am.
we get this information?
I can get it to you tomorrow as far as facilities are concerned with all of the deferred maintenance.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Floyd.
So 3 projects here, all under budget. I've got about roughly 2.1, 2.2 million under budget total. Great job, first of all.
Thank you.
Does that give us any options for anything else?
Yes, sir. We actually have 2 projects that weren't fortunate and weren't favorable. That's the PSA, Public Safety Academy, and Central Cabarrus roof, which is desperately in need of replacing. The favorable bids that we received on the 3 roofs that were supposedly funded this year that we're waiting on would leave us a surplus to cover those 2 items. We would be able to move forward with those after going through the appropriate channels to move that funding.
So there's even more at stake than 3 to getting this off the ground and quit messing around and get it done.
Truly.
Mr. Walter.
So back to Central Cabarrus, you had already you gave us an update several months ago about you've already bid that project for the roof, and what happened with that?
So on Central Cabarrus, the first time we bid it, it came in at $3 million. We had budgeted, I think, $1.2 million for it at the time. At the time, that was our last numbers and estimates. But because it has so many different buildings and additions, and because it was built in so many different decades, the price has just went astronomical. We already know that everything is far more than it was before COVID, and in the last 5 years, prices, we say an average of 5%, that's an average. You know, when you get to specific items, it can be a lot more than 5%. Roofs was one of those items. So we've bid that 4 times now. We've got it as low as I believe we're going to see it. We really are relying on these leftover funds to finish that job. And as we all know, we're probably not looking at a replacement for that school for at least 10 years.
But you do have a bid that you can use.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think we're in agreement to put this on the consent agenda. So we'll move to 8.04. Concord High School.
Thank you very much. Oh, sorry, I thought we covered both.
So you did? Okay, well, excuse me. So now we'll go to
We can talk more about it if you like.
Hey, it's okay. 8.05, come on up.
Yeah.
You're the next contestant.
That's right.
On
Good
The
evening
Price
once
is
again.
Right.
Mr. Collins, just one brief second, please.
Yes, sir.
Just so the board understands clearly, it's not the projects that the LGC is commenting on, it's the way things are being funded. I just want to make sure we understand that the projects are all tied into the funding, but it's the way it's being funded that the debate is taking place, just so we're clear on that. Thank you, Mr. Collins.
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure, that's all.
So I will preface this again. 8.05 and 8.06 are very similar. I'll read the summary of what we're asking for on the first one, and I'll be happy to answer questions on both of them if it's all right with you, Ms. Adcock. So 8.05, at the request of Cabarrus County and pending the approved funding, a preliminary guaranteed maximum price, or PGMP, is being presented as a part of the construction manager at risk A133 2019 standard form of agreement between owner and construction manager as a constructor with New Atlantic Contracting, our approved construction manager at risk for the Opportunity School project. The purpose of this PGMP is to authorize the CM at risk to accept bids from the principal trade and specialty contractors for the cost of work based on their pre-construction pricing exercises and not to exceed $10,476,149. This approval is required as a part of the presentation and the request to the Local Government Commission by Cabarrus County. This approval does not take the place of the bidding requirements set forth in Statute 143-128, the Construction Manager at Risk contracts. After receipt and acceptance of those final principal trade and specialty contractor bids, a final GMP amendment will be presented to this board for approval. In establishing the final guarantee maximum price, there will be no changes made to the CM's fee or the CM at risk contingency percentages. The cost of the bonds and the insurance that are part of those contracts will be adjusted as required. So what questions do you have?
Any questions? Mr. Walter?
Yeah, one has a CM fee of 4%, the other one has a CM fee of 3%. Why are they different?
So both, the larger project has a less fee. You're talking about Coulton Webb, yes. So a larger project, so your economies of scale play into effect there. The larger that number is, the less that fee is.
Similar to the architect fees, is that?
Yes, very similar, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Any questions on the Opportunity School ask? Do you want me to go?
You can just go through the next
one. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the next one is for the Coulton Webb Beverly Hills STEM replacement project. I'll read the main sentence. The purpose, again, of this PGMP is so that the CM at risk can accept bids from the specialty trade contractors for the cost of work based on their pre-construction pricing exercises and not to exceed $44,334,994. And then all the other language is the same in this ask as well.
Mr. Walter?
There's no AIA contract with this, is there? Are you going to have one?
That's already been approved. That was approved back in...
Like the other ones?
The AIA contract?
Well, whatever, the same document that we saw in the last two.
There should have been the A133 in
Did I miss it? 'Cause I didn't see
the
that
package.
when I reviewed the agenda before. Is it there now?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. And the other one is, I think when I looked at it before, there was looked to be like there was a math error. So if you look at exhibit, what exhibit is that? That's exhibit A.
I don't have the ability to do that. I'm sorry.
You're not controlling that right now? Yeah. We're on 3.0. Are we on 8.07? Is that one, or is this different? No, 06. Sorry about that. Okay, I got it. It's just different between those two and the one that comes next. So.
Correct. Yes. Yes. So you want to take a vote on those two? Because the next one's a little bit different, or you just want to do them all three?
We can.
Doesn't matter.
So that would be 8.05 and 8.06. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so everybody in agreement to put that on the agenda for our business session for consent. Okay.
I think, well, so 8.06, I would like on the action. 8.06. And 8.07 as well, even though we haven't got there yet.
Okay, 8.05 is on consent and 8.06 is on action.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, so 8.07 is the, in similar fashion, we're having to establish a preliminary guarantee maximum price at the request of the county. But because the board had already approved the original A133, what we're presenting to you is an amendment to that contract for a certain section defining that this is a preliminary GMP agreement now, as opposed to just the A133 agreement that you approved that did not have a dollar value to it. So this amendment provides a dollar value in the amount of $11,347,111 as a part of the pre-GMP for the amendment for the Mary Frances Wall project.
Mr. Walter?
Yeah, again, this is different than what we've seen before.
Very much.
And when they laid out the prices here on the exhibit, it looks like a double dip here on the bottom of Exhibit A for the fee. It says the CFR fee is 4%. Well, if you did 4% over the subtotal, that's what the other companies have done, but that's not what was done here. They took the 4% off the total. Why is that different?
I would have to ask, but
it's kind of like when you go to the restaurant and you get a bill and they want to tip you out plus the tax.
Sure.
It's kind of
I'd be happy to ask the question
kind of
and
a
let you know
double
what their response is.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, board members, I think Ms. Lindsay said she wanted 8.07 on the action agenda. Is that right? Okay, everybody in agreement with that?
I just asked if there's some additional clarity that we need as a reason for putting it on action.
I would just like to see it on the action agenda.
I mean, I asked Rob the same thing, so I'm asking, is there a reason why we're putting this on action as opposed to consent? Like, what are we waiting on? Is there additional information that they could provide to us that we need to consider it? No? Oh, okay. Awesome. We're just going to waste your time.
That all?
Give me an opportunity to vote no if I want to. That's why it's on action.
You can't do that before then?
No, we voted at our business meetings.
It's at the business meeting.
But when we vote on it, you could just say no then, right?
Well, it wouldn't be on action, it would be on consent. If it was on consent, we would just all be consenting to a yes vote. But in order for me to vote no, I have to put it on action to vote no.
Okay. Great.
It's all good. I'll be here. Sure.
Just so I know, is there something we should be weighing over? I haven't heard any. I don't know what to consider, what we're considering. So, and I'm not arguing. Is there something that we need to be thinking about for that yes or no vote? What do we?
Oh no, she just want to be able to say no. That's it.
I'll just say I'll talk to you afterwards. I'll talk to you afterwards. I'll talk to you.
Okay, let's not have any conversation without the mics on, please.
I was just asking Walter if he wanted it on action too.
Yeah, I support it being on action. It gives the public an opportunity to comment on it, and we can vote on it based on whatever they happen to share with us.
Fair enough.
Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, I think we're done.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, board members, we'll move to 9.01. We're going to look at the Code of Ethics for board members. We look back and it's been 2022 since we've even looked at this policy, so Mr. Eisenhower is going to go over it.
Sure. So I think it got alluded to at the beginning. Mr. Walter had asked a question why that was on the agenda. Mr. Floyd had indicated he didn't sign. That is correct, since he was appointed to the board subsequent to December 2022. He did not sign it. In the course of preparing his code of ethics, however, I pulled the December 5th, 2022 code of ethics, and it appears at that time, and I'm sure this was just inadvertent oversight, but it basically cut off the code of ethics. So you basically, the code of ethics, which is policy code 2120, is a 2-page policy, and the code of ethics you guys signed in December 2022 is 1 page, and it cuts off at B8. So it doesn't have what would be B9 through 16. And so what you see before you now is the full code of ethics. And so that's the reason this is just kind of a clarification. You guys are subject to the code of ethics whether you sign it or not. But your policy provides that you would sign these in the next meeting after you come onto this board. And since there were several folks who came on and signed what I think was just an accidental oversight, we're just clarifying that now. In the course of that, though, I did think it's a good idea just to go through Policy Code 2120 because it's just not something we talk about every day. Most of it's obviously pretty much common sense. This policy is required by law. It's required under General Statute 160A-86, also General Statute 115C-4757. And I'm not going to read all of it to you, but the subsection E is the big one. With the board member ethical requirements, the following standards will guide each board member in the performance of his or her official duties: the need to obey all applicable state and federal laws regarding official actions taken as a board member, the need to uphold the integrity and independence of the board member's office, the need to avoid impropriety in the exercise of the board's and board members' official duties, the need to perform faithfully the duties of the office, and the need to conduct the affairs of the board in an open and public manner, complying with all applicable laws governing open meetings and public laws. And then B goes through specific things that are not in the statute, but they are part of your ethics policy, and they do comply with North Carolina law. So you'll see your code of ethics basically follows along pretty much verbatim with the code of ethics. So we would ask you guys, unless anybody has any questions or comments on that form, to sign that. We can return it back to Christy, and then that can just be saved in your file, and it would just supplement the one that 6 of you signed back in December 2022. Does anybody have any questions on Policy Code 2120 or the Code of Ethics?
I do. Ms. Lindsay.
All right, so I have been looking over this Code of Ethics, and there's some things on here, and I know that I've signed this Code of Ethics before, but over the years, I feel like we have been had the opportunity to have situations arise where there might be some things on here that say that we're not allowed to necessarily insert ourselves within situations, and we have to allow administration to be able to handle that. However, as an elected official, I am beholden to my constituents and the folks that put me here. And so there are times that I have to insert myself and make sure that people are responded to within a timely fashion with administration or whoever they may be contacting. My other part of this is that there's number 14, avoid being placed in a position of conflict of interest and refrain from using a board member's position on the board for personal or partisan gain. This is a partisan board. We had a primary, and so it's very difficult to say that you're not going to do something based on your party when you were elected in a primary as part of what your party platform is. And I know everybody wants to say that education isn't partisan, but when you're elected to a position on this school board, the things that you believe and the things that you stand for are going to be what represents your decisions that you make here on this board. So I'm just not sure that this code of ethics actually really it doesn't meet to our standards of what we have now, since we do have a partisan election.
Sure. I mean, I would say to that, I think if we had an issue with that provision, that would have to be addressed in the policy itself, not in the code, because the policy just says that you will sign the Code of Ethics statement that includes these provisions. So I mean, but I hear you. I mean, I think if people have an issue with that provision or any others, then I just think technically the place to address that would be to have a policy change, if that makes sense.
So that would need to go back to the policy board.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could she cross out that provision and initial it for her specifically?
Mr. Walter, please go through the chair before you speak.
I personally would think that you should sign it as is just because it does, but I think it would be perfectly appropriate, and we do have a mechanism that if a board member has an issue with the policy to bring that before the policy committee.
Okay.
But I just would hesitate to advise someone to strike through something that was in the policy. Yeah.
Mr. Treadaway?
Yeah, I just one word you omitted was gain. Personal or partisan gain. I mean, it's to be personal or partisan is one thing, but partisan gain from a board perspective, that's not that's unethical. Yeah. That's unethical. I mean, we're not beholden to a party. We're beholden to our students and all of our constituents, not a party. I mean, and so the word I think the important word there that the most important word to me is gain. That's just my opinion. And you know, we can take it back to the policy committee, but to me that's a clear ethical issue right there.
Well, I'll just speak to that while we're here, is that is absolutely an obnoxious statement. We are responsible to the school district. We're responsible to the students that we serve, the parents we serve, and to think that we would use our position for our own personal or partisan gain means we're taking our position and we're doing what we think is best for us in a selfish way. That's how I take that. And that is a lack of integrity if we do that, if we are sitting on a board of education.
Okay, well, what I was trying to relay was not a statement of personal. What I'm trying to explain to you is that when you talk about partisan, I'm not saying it to gain something personal for myself. What I'm saying is that I make decisions. Part of the reason that I make the decisions that I make are because of my beliefs, my belief system. Sure. And so, to your point, I'm not necessarily saying like personal gain in that way, but what I'm saying is it is partisan. I mean, the decisions that I make on this board are partly based on my belief system and the things that I believe are going to be in the best interest for our students.
Mr. Treadaway?
Yeah, I totally hear what you're saying there, but I think you're misreading it. Personal and partisan are adjectives. The noun is gain. Yeah. That's the important word there, is gain. And certainly you're not implying that you want to have personal or partisan gain by being on the board.
No.
Okay,
what
sure.
I'm saying is that when you include the word partisan, especially in the sense now that we do have a primary, right? But I'm just trying to make that clear that, you know, people do base their decisions based on what their belief system is, and so that's my only worry with that. But there's several other things on here too that I think over the years I've realized have been very difficult, because as an elected official I am beholden to our constituents, and so, you know, to say that I'm going to stay out of everything, obviously if we have to have it brought up to us and we would have to vote in a board hearing, that would be one thing, but there are times that I have to, you know, follow up and continue to follow up with administration if people are not getting the responses back that they want to get from whoever it may be.
Mr. Floyd?
I think reminding ourselves that our constituents are our students. I don't know any Democrat second graders or Republican first graders. They want to learn, they want to be cared for, they want to feel safe. They don't care about this ridiculous game that we made up to play. And I'm not saying that disrespectful to anybody's beliefs, but I think we have to have a respect for what we are here to do and who we are here to serve and what mission we are here to adhere to. And yes, it's a partisan board now. I don't think somebody should be defined by that. I'm an independent, so what? I refuse to be put in a box because of that. I refuse to define you or you or you or you or you because of a R or a D. I refuse to do that. I'm not going to define somebody on TV that I've never even met just because of what a commercial tells me and what the news says about them. And I just don't think that's what we are here in this building to serve the children. I don't think that should be the primary focus. I think our mission should be what is best for kids. What can we all agree on is best for kids? Whatever we may disagree on that, and that is okay. That is good that we disagree on that. But what this policy says to me, specifically that letter, is a question that I ask myself every day before I do something, and I think that we all do, and we all should, and I think that we all do. I really do. Is this better for me, or is it better for the kids that we serve? Yes. Rarely will it be both. Rarely will it be both. And for me, there's only one answer that works. And I just don't think we should be walking down that slippery slope and introducing that poison into our schools.
Mr. Walter.
When I read through it, there are some terms in here that might be confusing and open to interpretation, which is sometimes problematic. I think what Brian's saying is putting kids first should be in here, and I don't see it there specifically. But I would like to see at least the policy committee review the policy just to make sure there are any changes and anything that needs to be clarified. But as of today, I guess if we haven't signed it, we need to sign it.
Yeah, I mean, the two things of clarification, and I think this is a really good discussion, actually, to go through this. This is why a lot of times I think people just sign these and not ever thinking about it. So in some ways, I think this has been a good exercise for everybody to think through it. I do agree on the personal or partisan thing. I don't think this prohibits you from being partisan. I think that is a key clarification that it's just partisan gain. If you use your position to further your partisan career, then that perhaps would be a violation of this policy, but not just being partisan itself. And then the other thing I would say is we do have another board policy that's separate from this, policy 2122, and that's the role of the board members in interacting with the public and schools. And so that kind of governs, your individual board members, how you meet with citizens and how you visit schools and how you react and interface with staff. So I think we have that covered someplace else. And then, as Escobar is pointing out to me, in our code of ethics, in the second group of numbers, number 2, it says, endeavor to make policy decisions while always keeping in mind the objective of providing students the opportunity to receive a sound basic education, and only after full discussion at publicly held board meetings. So I think that basically is saying that keep the students first.
Ms. Sandage.
We've all kind of spoken or alluded to our feelings on, how we make decisions. And for me, and I say this all the time as a licensed clinical social worker, how I feel goes out the window. I have to treat people with where they are in life, and I make decisions based off of what is best for that individual. I have to take myself out of the equation regardless of how I feel about it. And I think that we should treat all people that way. Our students have the right to be in our school system, and they have the right to come as they are. So we should be treating them based off of their individual needs and not our personal preferences. That's how we are supposed to look at our students. So that's my weigh in on that, and that's the social worker talking.
Okay, any other discussion? I know, Mr. Walter, you had wanted to address the board about a situation that we'd brought to your attention earlier. Do you want to use that time to do that?
I don't know if that's necessary if you haven't brought it up, so.
Well, that was what you had put in an email to us, that you wanted to address the full board. So do you want to use that time now to do that?
I don't have anything to say at the moment, because I don't have anything, you haven't made anything public, so.
Any other board members have anything to say about what we talked about in our 2x2s according to the situation with Mr. Walter?
I mean, I didn't know that we were going to necessarily bring this up tonight. I'm going to leave it up to Mr. Walter as to whether or not he wants to talk about this in a public situation. But since it's been brought up, I mean, we were in a 2-by-2 and there was a statement that was read. I don't know if that's a statement that you want to read publicly. I know that Mr. Walter had asked for that statement at some point last week and it was not provided, but I mean, I'm gonna leave it up to him about what he wants to say about it.
Yeah, I think we've signed a code of ethics. We all abided by that. That's my point of view, that we can visit schools, we can support teachers and show appreciation, and it doesn't have to be considered a political act or something less than genuine. So, I mean, it is what it is. We all do our thing. We're all unique. We all care about kids. We all have a passion for service. So that's all I was doing. So.
Okay. Ms. Anditch.
Yeah, I really just think this is non-transparent. So we're sitting up here talking about what has happened in a 2-by-2 that nobody has a clue of outside of this board and maybe a few district staff. So if we're going to bring it up, we need to let the public know exactly what we're talking about if we're going to continue to talk about it. That would be my thoughts on it.
Okay, I don't want to talk about it any further. It's not on the agenda to talk about. If you want to put it on an agenda for next week, that's up to you all.
Mr. Eisenhower, do you have any words of advice at this point?
I don't. At this time, I mean, if there's no further discussion, obviously we can talk about if this needs to be added as an agenda item for next Monday. But at this time, unless there's any more discussion, I think we're done with the code of ethics. I would say if you are willing to sign this. Please do so we can collect those. I don't know, did anybody have any issues further with that they wanted to talk about?
We'd just like the policy committee to review it, please.
Sure, and I would say if there are any specific comments or things you want to be changed, I think get those to us, so happy to route that back through. I do sit on the policy committee as well as Mr. Walter and Mr. Treadaway.
Okay, board members, with that, we'll move to 10.01. I call for a motion that the meeting be adjourned.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Sandage, a second by Ms. Lindsay. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.